This is an old Victrola record by the popular Irish tenor John McCormack. While listening to it right off the turntable, I was mesmerized by the tonal quality and elegance of this vintage recording. But this was not what I heard when I played it. This was what I actually heard. If you're familiar with these old shellac records, hearing this probably makes a lot more sense to you. However, what you heard before was taken from the same record before the audio was just slightly modified using some basic computer skills and some easy-to-use free audio software. Today I'll show you how to restore digital recordings of raw audio by removing clicks and surface noise so that they will sound professional and nearly flawless, like when they were new. So let's get into it. I want to note first that I couldn't find a great wealth of information on this subject. I don't see anyone talking about this a whole lot, or at least not in a great detail. So if you can help, drop a comment below. I learned a lot of what I know just from trial and error, experimenting, and learning from others. So I'd be happy to hear suggestions from you guys, so that others can learn, including myself. If you've used audio software before, you might know a lot of what I'll be showing you, but hopefully there's something here for everyone. So starting off, I'm going to take you to my computer screen here where I have Audacity loaded. And there are multiple websites online that show you how to download Audacity. All you have to do is follow Audacity's instructions for installing. When selecting a subject audio file, you want to make sure you're starting with high quality, unfiltered audio that hasn't been touched since it was transferred from the source. You want to start with a recording that is in the best condition possible and as clean as possible, and by that I mean no dirt or foreign matter that could get in the way while digitizing. I'll be demonstrating these on this file of a comedy album by Houston and Dorsey. And if you want to, you can listen to the full album on my channel if you enjoy old-time comedy and music. Now stick around until the end and I'll show you how to do a complete restoration of an older recording from a shellac disc. First, looking at this recording, I see that there are a few defects that stand out from the recording itself. We're going to narrow down on this one here. I'm going to switch to the spectrogram view.
If you want to be happy for the rest of your life, never make a pretty woman your wife. From my perspective.
So now what we can do is zoom in far enough so that you can see the individual samples. That's what each of these little dots are called. And highlight the area, go to Effects, Noise Removal and Repair, and click Repair. And what the computer does is it takes its best guess as to what it thinks is supposed to be there.
If you want to be happy for the rest of your life, never make a...
So it did a pretty good job removing it. Now it does have some limitations, because I don't have to zoom in. If you zoom in and look at the spectrogram again, or spectrograph, and highlight the area, you say, I want to repair this whole clip. Well, if you do so, it'll remind you that it has a limit of 128 samples. So the range is very limited. Now, Audacity does have a feature called the click removal, which claims to solve that problem, I suppose, but even when you play around with the features here, it's very hard to find a setting that removes the clicks and doesn't interfere with the audio. So audio technicians might have better luck with that than me, but I think we'll agree that there's another option available to us that's better. It's called the D-Clicker, and it's a plugin that you can get for Audacity. It doesn't come with it pre-downloaded. You download it separately. And how you do that is you go to your browser and download D-Clicker for Audacity, the plugin. Go to the Audacity forum, And there's declicker right there. You click on it, and you can download it and put it in your downloads. I already have it in here, so it should come up when I go back to my Audacity page. Go to Tools, go to Nyquist Plugin Installer. You're going to want to browse, and it'll take you to your downloads, and you'll find your declicker right up top. You'll want to select it, open it, make sure it's allowed, click Apply, Success, go to Effects, and if it doesn't show up at the bottom of Effects, you're going to want to reboot Audacity. But it should come up eventually. Now there's also a thing called noise removal, and it only works for background noise. I understand that some programs have better noise removal tools than others, usually the ones you have to pay for, but Audacity has it built in, but for our purposes we're not even going to go there because it can affect your recording, making it sound muddy and low quality. It's tempting to use it, but I would just stay away from it altogether. If you're dealing with a 78 RPM record, make sure that the right stylus is being used. Archive.org is a great place to get raw audio from old 78s. Unfortunately, they've been removing a lot of their 78s, which makes me sad because I was going to restore some old 78s from their collection, but they removed them. Otherwise, they're very useful, so when you find a recording you like, download it while you can. Overwriting is my preferred method for restoration, especially when trying to remove as many clicks as possible. And because the recording surface is shellac instead of vinyl, the clicks are usually more abundant on these old 78s than on vinyl. This method of overwriting preserves the originality of the recording because you are in control of what bits of information are affected. Each click is information that has been lost. And what you're doing is replacing it with better information, which is your best guess as to what was there originally, so you're not losing anything. Now, if you get a recording like this, you want to set your bass and treble to the desired level. Notice how down here it looks similar to how it does up here. It may fade out a little bit up here, but that's expected. What you don't want to do is for it to look like that, or even worse, like that, because if you're in that kind, it's going to look terrible. But if you try and make repairs when the treble is very high, as you can see, we can see a lot of high frequencies. We can't see hardly anything in the low frequencies, and the frequencies that we can't see are the ones we're affecting the most. So when you do that, I just picked this click at random, so I don't know if it's gonna do it, but if you try and touch it up, it will remove some of the click, but it will create a byproduct in the lower frequencies. You can see right here, not so much with this, but with this right here, right over here, this right here, it wouldn't have done that if we restored it or removed that click when it was at the desired balance. So that's why you do that. So you set it to the desired level for listening. And then, when you've done that, you want to amplify the track to the desired level. You can just leave it alone if you want to keep the original volume level, but you can also amplify it. And the reason why you'd want to do that is you would want to amplify it enough so that you can see the surface noise. In between these clicks, there's surface noise. on the waveform. So if you go on the waveform, see, you really can't see much of anything. If you amplify it by 5 decibels, okay, that's looking a little better. It's starting to show. Okay, that's a little too much. Right about there is good, because that gives you a ground zero on which to build the framework where you can reconstruct the audio where your defects are. Now, you don't want it to amplify it so much that it causes clipping. Like that. You don't want this to be clipped here. You want to keep it below that. This is okay here because this is a defect. We're going to remove that anyway. So, you also want to leave a reasonable amount of space before the beginning of the actual recording starts. If it's a record, for instance, or a tape. See, there's nothing here. But I'm keeping all this because me or someone else can always come and clip this later. And yes, I'm even going to restore this and counting all this. So you want to keep that. And then you will want to zoom in at the very beginning of your recording. To where you can see the individual bits of information there, little samples, and make your pass. And then it's faster to just do that and look at the next frame rather than zooming out, finding the next click, and zooming back in again, especially if the clicks are more densely packed. And then when you're done, when you've made a pass, about half an hour of doing this, you'll get like a few seconds cleared up, and then you can listen to it, and if you think you need to, increase the treble by 10 and the bass decrease it by 10 decibels, and then you can go by again and get the higher frequency clicks that you may have missed that might not show on the waveform initially. And as you can see, when you decrease the bass and increase the treble, a lot more of the higher frequency defects are shown. You don't want to do it in the opposite order because I already explained why, but you can do it after making your initial pass. And so you do that for a while, and that's the beginning of your restoration. Now, when you come to a large click and you're not exactly sure what it's supposed to look like, when in doubt, your best bet is to just follow the overall trend. But you can use the repair feature to help the computer, to let the computer help you decide what it's supposed to look like. But make sure and undo that, and then overwrite. And it'll give you different answers depending upon how much you select or whatever, because so it looks like it's supposed to go something like, I'm just going to go with that. So that looks good. So whatever you do, don't get lazy. Don't just make the declicker go through your recording and then everything that it left, repair it or overwrite. Or especially, what you shouldn't do is, even if you're overwriting just ones that are really hard, just mute it, or even worse, delete it. Don't do that. If you do that, you're not doing anything for your recording. And again, the repair, under certain conditions, the repair and even the declicker does leave residue or remnants behind after you've removed the clicks. And it can affect your recording as well. And when you're done making your pass, you can listen to the section again to see if you missed anything. But remember, when you come across these large clicks, they may have even left behind some remnant that you couldn't get. For example, this one. See, it's still left in here. So one thing you can do, if you can't hear it, just leave it. But one thing you can do is highlight the little area in the spectrogram, little pieces of it. Go to Spectral Tools and Spectral Edit Multi-Tool, and it kind of removes it for you. You can see what's left here. And so you can just keep doing that. Make sure you don't do it above. You want to do it between where all this sound is. You don't want to do it like right here. You don't want to do that because that'll, see, it messes up the sound. You want to do it in between. So after you've applied those skills and made a pass, listen to it again. Listen to it with good headphones, and you can also use the spectrograph to pinpoint individual defects that you may have missed as well. Try playing it at slower speeds. You can adjust this dial here and press the green button. I usually play it back sometimes as low as 0.12 times, maybe up to 22.22 times, 0.22 times, or down to 0.5, 0.9 down there, because you can really hear the higher pitch clicks that are maybe even too high for you to hear close to it. You can also play it at slower speeds just to help you pinpoint individual defects as well. For example, it's much easier to, if you hear something right in here, it's much easier to find it when it's going, when your dial is going this fast, as opposed to when it's doing this. That's a little bit hard to follow. So you can play it at slower speeds, and when you play it at slower speeds and it sounds smooth, just as when you play it at a regular speed, then you know you're on the right track. It also is helpful to stop for a while, get up, and then come back again later and listen to it, because you'll hear things you didn't hear before. Now when you're all done, if the recording is on an early Victrola record or something of that nature, you can apply a low pass filter to it. You cannot do this on a vinyl LP or a hi-fi recording of a 78 made after World War II, because even in the early days of recordings, early days of 78s, in the mid-20s and in later 20s, they had the new electronic microphones that were coming into the recording studios, and they were the hi-fi of the 20s, and they were way ahead in fidelity and clarity of sound than the acoustic recording methods that had been used previously. But as you can see, this electronic recording here doesn't have much above 5,000 hertz. So now what you can do, you've got all this surface noise here with no sound up here. So what you can do is apply a low pass filter of 6,000 hertz, 24 decibels roll off per octave, and it sounds pretty good. Now when you apply this filter, just remember that this is information that you cannot get back, and that's why it's always a good idea to save the original unrestored recording too. Of course, this recording you're hearing now is not restored, but I'm using this to show you that it even makes recordings that are not restored sound a lot better. You can imagine how nicely recordings that are restored sound with that filter on it. You can also apply a high pass filter if you want that removes the rumble near the bottom, but I don't like to do that too much, because even in the 1920s or 1928, when this recording's from, the bass notes of these early electric recordings sounded excellent, and so even in the lower frequencies, the lowest frequencies, I don't like to affect anything down there too much, because it might interfere with the audio, which I want to keep. Again, it's information that I can't get back. And now, the final step of the process. This next and final step is probably the most critical step in this process. Always remember, always to export as WAV, not MP3. MP3 compresses your file each time you load it, and you can notice the difference after exporting it merely once or twice. Here I have this same file right off the turntable. I have the original, I have it exported 10 times as WAV, and then it having been exported 10 times and reloaded as MP3. Here's the original. And now, here's the same recording, but exported and uploaded again as WAV. It sounds practically identical. And now, here's the same file again, but this time exported and re-uploaded 10 times as MP3. And the difference is quite striking. And look at the spectrogram. See how smooth this is? There's quite a difference there. Exporting it 10 times, that's all I did. If a friend of mine had a favorite album on record and digitized it for me in hi-fi and then sent it to me, exported as MP3 a few times, I'd be really disappointed, especially if it sounded like this. So that shows you the importance of preserving the quality of the recording as much as you can. Thank you for watching to the end. If you've learned something useful, or if there's something I mentioned that you'd like to expand on, please say so in the comments. Is there a particular recording on these old formats that you would like to see restored? Mention it below. I would love to see more people who have more time than me restoring just one vintage song that they particularly like, and one that hasn't been restored before. I hope more people are encouraged to take some time and listen to these old recordings. Even if it's 100 years old, there just might be one that strikes a chord with you. Thank you.